The Sunday Shomari.
Families of Ethiopian Airlines crash victims gather in Addis Ababa, awaiting the return of their loved ones' remains. The challenges and progress made in addressing the long-term skin condition vitiligo. And a South African studio redefines animated movies in Africa. Africa 54 starts right now.
Good evening and welcome. I'm Vincent McCory. This is Africa 54. A somber cloud hangs over Ethiopia on Tuesday, where distraught relatives are grieving for their loved ones lost in the Ethiopian Airlines passenger jet crash. Families of those killed aboard Flight 302 must wait at least 5 days to begin receiving some victims' remains. That's according to a statement released by the company. The Boeing 737 MAX 8 plunged into a field just minutes after taking off on Sunday from Addis Ababa. All 157 people aboard were killed. Relatives of the victims gathered at the hotels in the Ethiopian capital, awaiting news on their family members and updates on the crash. Due to the impact and ensuing fire, the identification of some remains could take weeks or months and may need to be done by dental records or DNA, according to an industry expert. The process will be complicated because the passengers came from more than 30 countries. The flight data recorders recovered on Monday should help investigators piece together the plane's final moments. Britain, Malaysia and Oman are the latest countries to suspend the Boeing 737 MAX 8 passenger jet from operating in their respective airspaces, joining a growing list of countries taking precautionary measures following the plane's second fatal crash in 5 months. But airlines in the United States have yet to ground their aircraft. Aviation experts say the new Boeing 737 MAX 8 has a different operating system from previous 737 models, and it is crucial to determine what caused the crashes before drawing conclusions. Viewers Laditza Hoke reports.
As the world mourns 157 people killed in the Sunday crash, experts are discussing what may have caused the pilot of the 737 MAX 8 aircraft to send distress signals shortly after takeoff. A British flight safety official says the Boeing 737 MAX 8 is quite a different plane from the classic 737.
I'm told by those who've flown it, it's very nice to fly. The airlines love it. It's 14 to 15% more efficient on fuel, which is massive. And but there is this question now about systems within the aircraft. It has to be borne in mind, though, that Boeing, in building this, have followed exactly the procedures that they were required to do by the Federal Aviation Administration. So they have certified, designed, approved that. They've demonstrated that it complies with the various standards that are out there.
The accident was similar to the October crash of a Lion Air jet that plunged into the Java Sea, killing 189 people. Both crashes involved the Boeing 737 MAX 8, and both happened minutes after takeoff.
Accidents are so complex, there can be so many factors and so random that can lead to or contribute to an aircraft accident, but it's not possible to make any deductions from those pieces of apparently similar information.
Indonesian investigators have not determined a cause for the October crash, but after that accident, Boeing sent a notice to airlines that faulty information from a sensor could cause the plane to automatically point the nose down. The notice reminded pilots of the procedure for handling such a situation.
There are so many safety systems, not just the 737, but in all the modern airplanes that are flying, that will prevent a pilot from making what the computer thinks is an erroneous input. This is not the artificial intelligence debate. This is just that there are some systems there which stop people putting in too large a correction, too large an input, or stop them from doing something counterproductive. And I think that these are the systems that sometimes override what the pilot is trying to do to salvage a situation.
The Boeing 737 was first introduced in 1967 and is one of the world's most common passenger jets. The new MAX 8 model made its first commercial flight in 2017. Boeing stocks fell 10% on Monday following the crash in Ethiopia. Zlatica Hoke, VOA News, Washington.
The United Nations says the verified deaths of at least 535 men, women and children in fighting between two communities in the Democratic Republic of Congo in December may amount to crimes against humanity. The fighting between Bununu and Batende communities was triggered by a dispute over the burial of a Bununu chief, according to UN investigators. Batende villagers attacked with extreme violence and speed, allowing little time for Bununu victims to escape. The UN says in January there were credible reports of at least 890 deaths in the clashes over 3 days in 4 villages in Nyumbi territory in the west of the country. To West Africa, Algerians are celebrating longtime leader Abdelaziz Bouteflika's stunning announcement that he will not seek a 5th term as president. People were jumping and cheering into the night Monday after Bouteflika's reversal to seek re-election following weeks of unprecedented protests over his fitness for office.
This is the first step in which the Algerian people managed to succeed. We have removed Bouteflika, but now it's the system in full which must go away.
It's a happy day for Algerian party, no matter if you're from the east or west. I can't express how I am feeling right now. It's real, a ray of sunshine.
Well, Bouteflika accepted Prime Minister Ahmed Ohia's resignation Monday and named Interior Minister Noureddine Bedoui as the new country's new Prime Minister and charged him with forming a new government. The 82-year-old Bouteflika returned to Algeria Sunday after spending 2 weeks in Geneva to receive what his office called routine medical checks. The state news agency APS says the ailing leader is promising to establish a panel to reschedule the presidential election that was initially planned for April the 18th. Well, members of the British-led Necton Research Institute on Tuesday boarded 2 submersible vessels off the Seychelles island to begin charting changes to the Indian Ocean. Video from an underwater camera showed the 2 craft exploring the side of an undersea mountain off Alphonse Atoll with shoals of fish swimming past. It is considered to be the first broadcast-quality multi-camera live shot from manned submersibles deep under the ocean surface. The 7-week expedition is expected to run until April the 19th. Well, South African President Cyril Ramaphosa says his country is ready to help Zimbabwe revive its economy, but within its means. A scarcity of US dollars in Zimbabwe has fanned shortages of fuel, drugs and food, choking an economy yet to recover from the disastrous rule of former leader Robert Mugabe. South African officials revealed in January that it had turned down a request in December from Zimbabwe for a $1.2 billion loan. But in a joint communique issued after a meeting between Ramaphosa and Zimbabwean President Emmerson Mnangagwa, the 2 countries said they were looking at increasing a standing credit agreement between central banks of the 2 nations. Under the deal, Zimbabwe can access $7 million from South Africa's central bank. Ramaphosa has renewed his calls for sanctions against Zimbabwe to be lifted. From an idea to a buzzword, the co-working movement is spreading rapidly worldwide. In the Zimbabwean capital, Harare, Impact Hub is changing the way young people are working and developing new businesses. Here's Africa 54's Paul Dio.
Tazoka Charai is an entrepreneur and a co-founder of Impact Hub Zimbabwe, a co-working space in the heart of Harare where she strives to cultivate an ecosystem that supports budding entrepreneurs as they launch small businesses.
Our mandate is to inspire, connect, enable for positive social impact. We're based in over 100 cities across the world, and basically we house change makers and help them in their quest to make the world a better place.
At Impact Hub, new businesses are being secured with securing funding while developing lifelong friendships. Charai says her vision is to support Zimbabwean entrepreneurs by helping them launch and grow their businesses.
What got me started is a passion for change, a passion for people, and really seeing that our local ecosystem needs inspiring spaces where people who think big can get together and make things happen. For example, we have the Micro Workspace Project, and this is a project for urban unemployed youth to learn how to work digitally online. Someone in Russia or in the United States can hire one of those participants to work for them, which is fantastic.
More importantly, she says it also helps her to inspire young women to become involved in the tech space.
The women in technology who use our space focus on breaking that glass ceiling by creating products that are world-class. They are here to show that girls are just as competent as men. They are here to not only do that, but to also build products and services that help their communities.
Several young change makers are benefiting from Impact Hub. For example, Namatai Kwekweza uses the space to connect with other young people to address Zimbabwe's economic challenges. Her startup focuses on developing peer-to-peer interactions.
We develop leaders, cross-cutting. We have economic leaders, we've got business leaders, we've got political leaders, environment leaders. And what we do is we aim to create an interactive platform where the politicians will interact with the entrepreneurs, and where the entrepreneurs interact with the techies, so that they share ideas and then they exchange ideas, because we believe that this is where most of the ideas are.
Tapiwa Mupakati, a software test analyst with Crystal Quality Assurance, is also taking advantage of the co-working space.
As QA, we partner with them to make sure that we come up with a totally defect-free software. So we do testing for web applications, mobile applications. We do what we call functional testing to make sure that every function of a developed software performs as expected.
Simba Kanyimo runs Tarero Trust, a non-profit charitable organization out of Impact Hub facility in Harare. His mission is to support young girls.
Our mission is basically to educate and empower the girl child. So we assist girls in high-density suburbs of Harare so that they can be able to go to school through payment of their school fees, school supplies, like uniforms and stationery, as well as life skills training.
What started over 10 years ago as a gathering place for impacted trailblazers in London has grown to a community of thousands of professionals making an impact in towns and cities all around the world. And for Impact Hub Harare, they are seizing the moment. Paul Diho, VOA News.
Well, I want to know what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we covered. Join the conversation on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our show live on Facebook, so check us out and share our show with your friends. Find me on Twitter at VOA Vince McCory. Still ahead on Africa 54, understanding the causes and treatments of vitiligo. But first, a look at Tuesday's headlines.
Maintenant, il appartient évidemment à l'Algérie que les prochaines semaines et les prochains mois permettent.
Between the 16th and the 18th of December last year at 4 locations, and these were planned and executed with the support of customary chiefs and may amount to crimes against humanity.
تناولنا بصورة واسعة
Well, the top U.S. envoy to North Korea says the East Asian nation must completely give up its nuclear weapons before the United States will begin lifting any sanctions. We get more now from VOA's Bill Gallo.
For the U.S., it's an all all-or-nothing approach to getting rid of North Korea's nuclear weapons. Though President Trump had signaled flexibility ahead of his summit last month with Kim Jong-un, the top U.S. negotiator for North Korea is now sending a tougher message.
We are not going to do denuclearization incrementally. The president has been clear on that, and that is a position around which the U.S. government has complete unity.
Kim has said he's willing to begin dismantling parts of his nuclear program in exchange for the U.S. taking corresponding measures. In particular, Kim wants sanctions relief. North Korea appears to be backing up that demand with a threat of more missile tests. Commercial satellite images suggest North Korea has rebuilt parts of a satellite launching station and increased activity at a site used to assemble ballistic missiles and rockets.
It's their anger at the summit not ending well, but it's also ratcheting up pressure for future negotiations. This is their traditional negotiating posture. You know, turn up the heat, shoot a missile.
The big question is how Washington would respond to a North Korean missile test.
I would be very, very disappointed in Chairman Kim, and I don't think I will be, but we'll see what happens.
The current deadlock is a major test of whether the Trump-Kim relationship can help revive the faltering nuclear negotiations. Bill Gallo, VOA News, Washington.
Well, it's time now for a health report, and joining us now is Africa 54 health correspondent Lino Amadou with news on the HPV virus. Lino.
That's right, Vincent. The human papilloma virus is so common that the U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says nearly all sexually active men and women get it at some point in their lives unless they are protected by vaccination. The HPV virus can lead to cancer in both men and women. VOA's Carol Pearson has the details.
Time you can fish is a good time.
Fishing was Scott Ward's way of relaxing. He didn't have any risk factors that he knew of for cancer, so he ignored the lump on his neck until he couldn't ignore it anymore.
We're seeing more and more younger, healthier patients. They're not smokers or drinkers, obviously, and so it's HPV related.
Smoking and drinking can cause oral cancers. Ward's cancer was caused by HPV, the human papilloma virus.
Normally you think HPV, you think of women, cervical cancer.
HPV does cause cervical cancer, but it's a misconception that only women have to be concerned with HPV-caused cancers.
The big ones are the cervical cancer, and the other one's the oropharyngeal cancer.
Oropharyngeal cancers affect the head and neck. Ward's cancer started in a tonsil. But there's a vaccine that's been around for more than a decade that can protect against the HPV virus. If all boys and girls received it, no one would get HPV-caused cancers.
Was that painful? No.
The HPV vaccine is best when given to children before they're sexually active, but teenagers and young adults can still benefit from the vaccine. Not everyone who gets the virus develops cancer, but it is a risk factor. Ward's recovery was difficult. He had surgery, radiation, and chemotherapy, but he's now cancer-free.
It's a journey. I made it through.
The vaccine didn't exist when Ward was a kid, but he says if he had kids, he would get them vaccinated.
It's a prevention. Get it.
The HPV virus also causes 500,000 cases of cervical cancer each year. These are cancers no one needs to get. Carol Pearson, VOA News.
Now, vitiligo is a skin disorder characterized by patchy depigmentation of the skin. Up to 2% of people worldwide are affected by the skin condition, which affects men and women equally. Experts say more awareness and resources are needed to address vitiligo, especially in developing countries. Dr. Dawn Davis, president of the Society for Pediatric Dermatology, discusses skin disorder and some of the challenges and progress made in addressing vitiligo.
Vitiligo is a common and very devastating disease. We're not sure the exact pathogenesis of vitiligo, but we believe that it is an autoimmune destruction by the body's own immune system of the melanocyte. So the melanocyte is the cell within the skin that makes pigment that then gets released to keratinocytes, which are the skin cells that make up the brick wall that is your skin layer. And various people have different types of melanocyte pigment that give them their natural skin tone. And we believe that the patient's immune system targets the melanocyte and destroys it. And when that pigment-producing cell is no longer present in the skin over time bleaches because there's no pigment production going on. And that leads to a milky white appearance. That's devastating for patients of all skin colors, but is of course more obvious the darker your skin naturally is.
Can a baby be born with vitiligo, or is it something that must develop over?
It's something that's usually acquired.
Acquired? Yes. Could you elaborate?
Yes, so when something is autoimmune, it takes time to for the immune system to turn on and decide that it has an area of focus of which to focus on.
Okay.
So you can get vitiligo across the ages, and it happens frequently in young children, and also as we age in adulthood. And that's thought to be due to the fact that when you're a young child, your immune system is young and naive and learning, so it makes mistakes. And when you grow older and wiser, your immune system starts to retire and forget its ways.
So if it's acquired, is there not a way then to prevent it?
Currently, we do not know of a way to prevent vitiligo. However, we do believe that once vitiligo starts, the faster you can get in to seek healthcare professional advice and start treatment, most likely the better your prognosis, that we can hopefully stop the destructive process of the melanocytes and hopefully reverse it to allow your skin to repopulate and grow new melanocytes that can then start producing pigment.
So it can be reversed?
So for some patients, it can be reversed.
And is there a population that is more prone to developing vitiligo?
No, vitiligo happens across all populations of people. Which is very interesting because most diseases happen preferentially in one demographic versus another, but vitiligo is truly a very broadly impacting disease.
Is there a genetic link to it?
Some cases of vitiligo tend to run in families, just like autoimmune diseases tend to run in families, but it's not a directly inherited disease.
Now, in terms of research, treatment, and prevention tool, what do you see the need?
There's definitely a need to close that gap. Vitiligo happens very frequently on the face, the hands, the parts of the body that are visible, and it can be very devastating. And so psychosocially it's of concern and alters people's quality of life, but also from a medical standpoint, because if you don't have natural sun protection from the skin coloring that protects you from ultraviolet light, you're then at risk for increased photo damage and skin cancer in those areas that are vitiliginous. And so we have a medical and a cosmetic psychosocial reason to proactively research vitiligo and try to help patients find a cure. Our cure efforts work on decreasing inflammation and decreasing the attack against the melanocyte, and also figuring out how we can teach the body to grow melanocytes once they've been destroyed. I would encourage patients, as soon as they see a spot that starts to bleach on their skin, that if they have concern that they could potentially have vitiligo, seek healthcare professional advice sooner rather than later. Time is of the essence.
And that's our health report for today. To stay in touch, find me on Twitter at Lenore Moudou. Vincent, back to you.
Well, Lenore, thank you very much. Now be sure to watch Lenore Moudou's health reports every Tuesday and Thursday right here on Africa 54. It is what's trending. Adventures of Zambezia is an animation film lauded by critics for being among the best South African animation films ever created. The film, which was released in 2012, was made and produced by Triggerfish Animation Studios and went on to make over $34 million at the box office. The Cape Town-based company is currently the largest animation studio on the continent, producing African-themed stories, with many accolades, including a 2018 Academy Award nomination for Best Short Film and numerous South African Film Awards. Triggerfish is now at the forefront of the industry. It is in the process of establishing the Triggerfish Academy, an initiative between the Walt Disney Company and which will teach industry-based skills to young people who may not have the means to follow a career path in animation. Well, next up, researchers at the University of Washington are tackling the U.S. opioid crisis with an app to monitor drug users' breathing. The app, called Second Chance, uses the phone's speaker to bounce inaudible sound waves off the user's chest while they are taking opioids. It then analyzes the sound waves to judge how fast they are breathing. They are developing its ability to call 911, a friend or a family member with access to the drug naloxone that reverses the symptoms of an opioid overdose once their breathing drops below 7 breaths per minute. The university says the app's algorithm detected overdose-related symptoms approximately 90% of the time, and that's what's trending today. Well, a company that designs and develops musical instruments for people with physical disabilities has created a conductor's baton, which allows the visually impaired to follow its movements. As Faith Lapidus reports, this opens up the potential for blind musicians to join more orchestras.
Standing before the orchestra, the conductor guides the music with a sweep of the baton. The assembled musicians watch its movement for cues. Play more smoothly, now louder, staccato, softer. But how can musicians who are blind, like violinist Abby Baker, follow the conductor?
In the past, we've been reliant on hearing sounds around us, so I've been playing in a violin section and I've been reliant on hearing the other musicians putting up their instruments and then guessing roughly when to come in, which obviously isn't ideal for me because if you're playing something fast, you can miss a bit.
The haptic baton can help visually impaired musicians come in on cue. Its developer, Vahakan Matosian, explains that it contains sensors that pick up even the conductor's slightest motions.
And what it does is it senses the movement of the hand. It senses angle, it senses roll and pitch. It also senses whether you're making these sharp gestures or gentle stroking gestures. It knows where it is in space.
That information is transmitted via radio signals to devices attached to musicians' wrists or ankles. They vibrate and buzz in different ways to indicate to the player the pace and dynamics the conductor wants. It's a game changer for blind musicians, says pianist Kevin Satisabel.
And this technology essentially plugs you into the conductor's movements, which is really exciting, and it means that, musicians, orchestras won't have any excuse not to hire visually impaired musicians because the technology is right there, allowing them to be an integral part.
The haptic baton is still being tested with musicians and conductors, like Ewan Campbell.
When using it and being able to feel the signals that it gives you, you adjust what sort of motions you make and what sort of indications you do, but quite quickly, and I don't think with very long, I could form a new conducting style that wasn't a visual conducting style, but was a sensory conducting style.
Matosian hopes his design company, Human Instruments, will have the haptic baton available next year. Faith Lapidus, VOA News.
Well, and that's our show for today, and I'll be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. And for more news, tune in to VOA's evening radio show, Africa News Tonight, at 1800 UTC, and in the mornings today, Break Africa between 0300 and 0600 UTC, Monday through Friday. Thanks a lot for watching. Have a good night.